If people are hungry and if they are able to get the food chewed up and swallowed, they will let you know. Even if they are non-verbal, if they can't speak, they will open their mouth. They will move their head forwards to indicate that they are ready for the next bit. Now you might think, that's why would anyone give the wrong food to the wrong patient? And I can tell you, it is so easy to make a mistake on our ward. The turnaround of patients is very, very, very high. Don't bring drama to the table. There's no need for that. It's a social thing, and it's up to you to make it social. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Quality of Life Quest. My name is Anneke. And today's topic is helping someone else to eat or feeding someone else. It's a bit of a weird topic, perhaps, and you think, what has that got to do with me? Well, I work at, one of the things I do is I work as a healthcare assistant at the acute medical unit. And the acute medical unit is an extension of A&E in hospital. Not many people plan on going to hospital, to A&E. That's, it's not something you get up in the morning and think, oh, I fancy a trip to A&E. No, something happens in your life and all of a sudden you find yourself in A&E. And once you've gone through the system there and the doctors decide that you have to stay in hospital, you end up at AMU, the acute medical unit, which is where I work. So you don't plan an emergency, you do not plan to get to AMU, yet there you are. And your loved one is, for whatever reason, unable to feed him or herself. So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is me and people like me. And I start my day with 8 to 9 patients, depending on the day. And depending on staffing. So if staffing is low, I can have anything from 8 to 9 patients up to the entire ward if I happen to be the only one there that day. Which means, around 30 patients. That's a lot of mouths to feed. Now, you never know what kind of patients are there. Sometimes you are lucky and the patients who are there, they are independently mobile, they can look after themselves, wash themselves and feed themselves. And then there are days where, one patient after the other needs a lot of help, which is my job, which is fine. It's just when it comes to mealtime, that might be a problem. Because I've only got one pair of hands and I can only feed one patient at a time. Now, in the morning for breakfast, that's not that much of an issue because, it's either toast or cornflakes or something. And whether they eat it now or in 10, 15 minutes time, that's all fine. When it comes to lunch and dinner, however, there's always options for hot meals. So hot meals are the standard, and if people don't fancy a hot meal, they can ask for a sandwich or a salad. But hot meals is the main thing. And if I need to help a lot of people, the first person I help will have his or her hot meal. The second person I help, the food will have cooled down considerably, and by the time I've helped 2 people and come to the third person, their food will be cold. And people on the whole don't like eating cold food when it's supposed to be hot, and they will go like, well, I'm not that hungry to start with and I don't fancy eating cold soup or cold whatever it is. So there's that side of the equation. So there you are in hospital with a loved one, and it's announced that lunch or dinner is on the cards. It's imminent. It's going to happen. And quite often, visitors pack up and leave. Now, that might be some sort of ingrained thing that when you visit someone at home, and you've been there to have a cup of tea and a wander around and a natter, by the time it's dinner time, unless you've been specifically asked to stay for dinner, you kind of take that as your clue to leave. However, if your loved one is unable to eat, it would be amazing if you could ask staff if it was okay for you to feed your loved one. If there is no reason not to feed your loved one, then it will always be greatly appreciated if you offer. There are sometimes reasons why it's better for staff to feed someone if the patient needs to be assessed or whatever. Sometimes it's better for staff to feed someone. But on the whole, help from friends and family is greatly appreciated. So there you are, loved one. You've asked, is it okay if I help? It's greatly appreciated. The answer is yes. Then how do you go about it? So, hereby a guideline as how to go about it. The first thing you do is you check that it is the right food for the right patient. How do you do that? On our ward, there's a big whiteboard on the wall behind the patient. It contains the patient's name and it contains allergies, food preferences, and the texture of food. So if it's just a name, then the patient can eat whatever he or she wants. But if there are if there are allergies mentioned or preferences or textures, please take note. Allergies are self-explanatory. If it says pineapple, please don't feed people pineapple. And, whatever is on the list, if you can see that there's something on the list and there's the same thing on the plate, do not feed the patient that. Then there's preferences. So you can have vegetarians, vegans. If there's meat on the plate, please don't feed it to them. And then there's texture. Now, the texture is for people who can't chew properly or who can't swallow properly. And they need to have either soft food or pureed food. And there's even a level above that where it's really it's I can't even describe what kind of texture it is like. It's beyond just puree. It's beyond that. It's even finer than that. Now you might think, that's why would anyone give the wrong food to the wrong patient? And I can tell you, it is so easy to make a mistake on our ward. The turnaround of patients is very, very, very high. And it is so easy for a patient to give their food preferences because during the morning, someone comes around to ask the orders. And in the afternoon, someone comes around to ask the orders for dinner. And it happens a lot when a patient orders certain food and is then moved to another ward. So there's another patient in that place. So they get the food of the patient who was there before. They don't get food they have ordered. They get food the previous patient has ordered. So if your patient can eat whatever, that's not so much of a problem. But if your patient does have allergies, preferences, or texture requirements, then that is very, very important. So, right food for the right patient. Next one, temperature. If you've got a normal diet, then the temperature the food will be definitely warm. And it won't be much of a problem. You can feed it to someone without much of an issue. It is the pre-packed food for the special diets that that it comes in. It looks a bit like a microwave thing. Do you know how pre-packed microwave food looks like? It looks a bit like that, and those are hot. They are piping hot. The hospital has taught me what piping hot actually means. Whenever I put a food in a microwave and I think, oh well, that's quite warm. That's quite hot. No. Piping hot is if you were to put that in your mouth, you would burn yourself. So if your loved one, your family, friends gets pre-packed food, make sure that it's the right temperature to eat. Number 3, when you are right-handed, sit at the right side of the patient. If you're left-handed, sit on the left side of the patient. You can try this out at home. Try to feed someone else if you are right-handed, sitting on their left-hand side. And you will notice that your arm has to do a really weird maneuver to get a utensil towards their face, let alone precision in their mouth. It's difficult. So if you're right-handed, sit on the right side. If you're left-handed, sit on the left side. Point 4, take a spoon. Use a spoon. I use a spoon. Even though I get presented with all sorts of cutlery, I use a spoon. Why? It is already difficult to control your own movements. It's very common for patients when they are ready for the next bite to move their head forwards. Or some patients have got less control over their head and their head kind of bobs all over the place. If you are then using a fork and you're on a collision course with someone's head, that would cause damage. So spoons are safer to use. Number 5, make sure the patient is conscious. You cannot feed someone who is unconscious. And conscious is also you asking the patient to open their eyes. Make sure they are there, they're with it. There are instances where patients on our ward close their eyes because of the light. There's the central light that's on is at a really bad angle, and it shines in the patient's eyes, which is unpleasant even when you're just sitting there being healthy. When you're there and you're unwell, it's not nice to have that light shine in your eyes. However, you really, really, really need to make sure that the patient is conscious and with it when you start feeding someone. Number 6, make sure the patient sits upright if at all possible. So, of course, there are moments in time where patients can't sit upright when there's something wrong with their spine or, whatever. There are times where it's not possible. But if at all possible, make sure that the patient sit upright. If the patient does not sit upright, yet can sit upright, ask for help. Do not start pulling on a patient to make him or her go this way, that way, or the other. There's a reason why they're in hospital. It's not always clear what the reason is. Sometimes people have fallen down and you don't know what's wrong with the patient, and you could hurt the patient and you can hurt yourself. It's quite something to move someone if there's no give, if they don't help out with it, and it's easy to hurt yourself. So if the patient needs to be repositioned, please ask for help. And then number 7 is communicate what you are doing. Talk the patient through what it is you're doing, where you are in the process. It sounds a bit over the top, but especially at the beginning, to suss out where the patient is at, that's a good thing to do. Right. So you're all set. You put a tiny bit of food on the spoon. Please, a tiny bit. Just the tip of the spoon. That's enough. If people are hungry and if they are able to get the food chewed up and swallowed, they will let you know. Even if they are non-verbal, if they can't speak, they will open their mouth. They will move their head forwards to indicate that they are ready for the next bit. But start off with a tiny bit on a spoon, and for most people that's enough. Then watch the progression of the food, and it's a social event. Eating is a social event. They've got the mouthful, so you're the one who needs to the conversation going. It won't be a conversation; it will be more like a monologue. But yeah, tell them something that happens during your life, during your day. Hopefully, it's a nice story. It's a feel-good story or a funny story. Don't bring drama to the table. There's no need for that. But yeah, it's a social thing, and it's up to you to make it social. Okay. Now, this whole episode, this story, came about when I saw a student nurse interact with a patient, or initially didn't interact with a patient. And so there was this patient. I knew her from another bay. I'd worked with her before. And she was quite a character. She was lovely. She was full of life, just a lovely person. And she happened to be blind, and she happened to be unable to feed herself. And there was this student nurse, and he came around and put the food on the table and left. He didn't say anything. He didn't, he just put the food on the table and left. And so I asked him, did you have a look at the board? And he hadn't. I said, okay, have a look at the board. So on the board, it said that this patient was blind. I said, okay, so, look at where the table is, where the utensils are, and did you mention where it is, and can she actually reach, and all the rest of it? And the answer was no. He hadn't looked. He hadn't seen that she was blind, and it was very obvious that her being blind, she wouldn't be able to locate her food. And I knew that she also couldn't eat by herself. So I said, this lady, there's this, that, and the other going on. So she needs help feeding. So can you please do that? And he did. And he'd never done that before. So I had to instruct him on how to do that, which is fine. Everyone has to start somewhere. It was his first placement, and on his first placement, this was the first day. So bless his cotton socks, he was thrown in at the deep end, which is fine. It's as I said, everyone has to start somewhere. And so I talked him through it, and he started feeding this patient, and I was with another patient in the same bay. And there was this silence. It was crickets. So I did go over to him and, I said, well, this lady, she's full of beans. She is standing in the middle of life, and she's eating, so she can't talk. It would be nice if you had a story, if you could tell us something. And so we found some common ground, things they were both interested in, and he could indeed tell a story. He was slightly embarrassed by it, but he will get used to it. I watched him and I listened kind of in on their conversation, not what they were talking about, but at least that there was some story going on there. So this is a short recap of what it is you do if you happen to find yourself in that position, that your loved one is in hospital and you need to help feed them. Make sure there's the right food for the right patient. Make sure it's the right temperature. Make sure you're on the right side of the patient. So right-handed, right side, left-handed, left side. Make sure the patient is conscious. Make sure the patient sits as upright as they can. And communicate about what you're doing. Make sure that your loved one gets food at the right time and the right temperature and all the rest of that. And it can give you insight into what's happening, where you're at, where your loved one is at. Sometimes when you put food in front of someone, nothing is happening. It's sitting there, they look at it, and that's it. Sometimes you put food in front of someone, and a lot of things are happening, but it's not going into their mouth. There just isn't the hand-mouth coordination at that moment in time. So food all over the place, nothing gone in. It will also show how difficult it is to eat. Opening your mouth, if you say to someone, open your mouth, they need to open it wide enough for the spoon to fit in. And don't put the entire spoon in the mouth. Just the tip of the spoon is enough. Just a little bit of food that's on the spoon needs to be behind the upper lip. Because how do you get food off your spoon? You scrape it off with your upper lip. It's something you learn as a baby. And for some people, that's not happening. So you have to keep an eye on that. Chewing food, that's a task in itself. Swallowing is also something you need to keep an eye out on. Swallowing, you can actually see food going down. Swallowing is a thing in itself. There are people who are specialized in checking out how well patients are doing with swallowing. They're the ones who decide on what the texture of the food should be. So 15 minutes of your time can mean the world to a patient, and it can mean an awful lot to us as well. As I said before, I hope you never need it. But when you do need it, if you find yourself in the position that you do need this, I hope this podcast comes to mind and you will remember some of the things I mentioned, and it will start the process of remembering the rest of the list as well. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again, see you next time. Okay, bye.